Welcome to our San Francisco Mayoral Candidate Forum at the Museum of the African Diaspora. This forum is hosted by several of the city's most prominent business and hospitality organizations: Advance SF, the SF Chamber of Commerce, the Bay Area Council, BOMA SF, the Hotel Council of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Restaurant Association, and SF Travel. The aim is to hear from each candidate equally in a neutral setting. We're hosting 5 separate interviews. Each candidate will be asked identical questions. There may be an opportunity for a few follow-up questions per candidate. Each interview is 45 minutes and in front of a live audience. The Coalition of Host Organizations is not endorsing any candidates, and these interviews are being made public for educational purposes. And I'm Margaret Conley, and will serve as moderator. Let's get started with Mayor London Breed. What is driving you to be mayor?
A lot is driving me to be mayor. In fact, I came into office during tragedy and then led the city through one of the worst public health crises we've seen in 100 years. I mean, none of us seen it because none of us were alive when it happened, but and it's been challenge after challenge, crime and other issues. And now we're finally starting to, with all the hard work, see change and see the city become better and become a city that we can all be proud of. And I have helped to lead that change. And I'm excited about what this means for the future. I'm excited about the ability to transform downtown into a 24/7 neighborhood. I'm excited about all the new concerts and activation and fun that is expected to come to San Francisco, including next year, the NBA All-Star Game and the Labor Cup. I'm excited that, I've been able to, as mayor, increase our public open spaces where people have gathered. We've been able to increase that significantly with outdoor dining, with slow streets, with JFK Boulevard and the Great Highway. And it's become an opportunity for people to gather in community, unlike before the pandemic. So I'm really excited and looking forward to leading this city to the next opportunity of hope and excitement. And this city is on the rise, and it's been a long time coming, and I'm really excited about what that means.
You're receiving a lot of heat from your opponents. How are you taking it all, Mayor?
Well, I will say most of it is not entirely accurate, and in some cases there were people who have been nowhere to be found. So it's easy to criticize, it's easy to tear down, but what's been actually hard is to do the work and to roll up your sleeves and to get the job done. And there's a lot of things that, people are running for mayor. So that this is a part of what happens when you have candidates. There are candidates who want the position, and they're going to say what they need to say in order to get it. And that's just a part of what happens in elections. But I think the biggest difference here is not only have I've done a lot of the things that they're talking about, but I'm also doing a lot of the things that they're talking about. And so I guess they would say imitation is the best flattery. And so I almost feel flattered that, many of the things that I'm proposing, they're talking about even in their own platforms. And some of the other things they're talking about, not really within their jurisdiction to do. But hey, it is what it is. And I welcome the opportunity to work together, to collaborate, and to figure out ways in which we can get things done for San Francisco, because I definitely don't doubt anybody's strong desire to make San Francisco better. I just think that I have the best platform to do it, and I have been doing it. And I think the things that have been happening in San Francisco, a lot of the change, a lot of the excitement has led to, I believe, a new day in our city, and I'm really excited to continue to lead those efforts.
We're here in downtown San Francisco at the beautiful MOAD. What are your plans for a thriving downtown, for the business community, for residents, for workers, for sports and cultural institutions?
Well, I welcome that, because downtown cannot be what it was before the pandemic. We had, people wanting to develop office space. They were like standing in line, 5-year wait list to build. And on top of that, we've created new neighborhoods like Mission Bay, Pier 70, and other parts that weren't even options in the past. And now that we've been through a pandemic and now that work from home is part of the norm, it means downtown can't be the 9-to-5 financial district that it once was. It has to be a 24/7 neighborhood, a place where people work, where they live, and where they play. So my 30 by 30 plan is to bring 30,000 new residents and students to the downtown by 2030, to increase activation during nightlife. There have been a lot of night markets, including First Thursdays, Bhangra and Beats, and other concert series that are coming to Union Square. Completely rezoning the downtown to make it easier to convert office high-rises to housing if possible, and to potentially dorm room space. We are hosting, even as we speak, almost 100 students from historically black colleges and universities. They're in Westfield. If you want to go say hi, they might be taking classes and studying and other things, but we're trying to demonstrate. We're going to be putting out a request for information to universities all over the country because we want people to see downtown as a place for universities and students to thrive as well. But housing, diverse workspaces, not just retail, not just office, but retail, office, lab, classroom space. All of those things are what we need to allow for in a place like San Francisco, especially downtown, because downtown has been so restrictive. It's been extremely restrictive in terms of what you can and can't do. It's like, no, you can't do this here. You can't do it. You got to do it across the street. You have to do it here. San Francisco has been notorious for getting to no. And my goal is to get to yes by changing policies and making investments, including in my current budget for revitalization of downtown, in the bond that we have coming before us to reimagine the design and the look of, Holiday Plaza and other spaces, and just really thinking bigger than just being stuck with what something is, but what something can be. Soccer stadiums, activation, closed streets, protected bike lanes, better muni services, and different routes that make sense to get people to downtown more safely and efficiently. It's all of the above, and I'm really excited about it. And I try to remind people, when I think about what downtown is starting to become, I'm really excited about it because it's not just limited. It's opening up to possibility. Who would have thought that Magnin building would be more than just retail, right? Retail, office, and housing right at Union Square. How incredible is that? And that is what we need to start thinking about in making downtown San Francisco a 24/7 neighborhood with our policy changes and our investments, and we are well on our way with my downtown economic recovery plan.
How will you get more of those no's to yeses?
Well, luckily, some of the people on the Board of Supervisors are running for mayor because that's been extremely helpful. In fact, Supervisor Peskin has, some of the things we've done together are just shocking me, including rezoning the entire downtown so that you don't go through a 2-year process if you want to convert the Men's Warehouse building to housing. It's already zoned for that purpose. He's worked with me to reduce the inclusionary housing rates and the impact fees so that we can make it a little bit more economically feasible, even though we can't control the interest rates, we can't control the labor cost and materials and supplies, but we can control our city bureaucracy and our fees. So it's been extremely helpful. We've already done some of it. And in the past, if they weren't running for mayor, I don't know if that would be the case. And I think, this is exciting because we're seeing new opportunities where they didn't exist before. So we are well on our way. These investments are being made. One of the other things that I'm really proud of too is our Vacant to Vibrant program. So last year we started a program where we work with property owners to allow for free space, and the city invested the money. We were like the angel investor, I guess you would call it, for the insurance and all the other fees associated with the space. And we had 9 original businesses, 7 of them signed long-term leases, including Roslyn Bakery. It's delicious. You got to go there. And Devil's Teeth, and there's a couple of others. And we're starting more Vacant to Vibrant programs, not just in the downtown, but also all over San Francisco. We waived fees for new small businesses in this city for the first year through our First Year Free program. So almost 7,000 new businesses have taken advantage of First Year Free. So there's a lot of really exciting things that are happening now and coming into play. So we just got to continue this momentum, and we have to make it easier to get to yes. And some of that is already happening now.
Public safety is a big campaign issue. How will you protect the public, fight crime, and work with the various agencies like the SFPD and SFDA to ensure safety in our city?
Yeah, and I think here's the thing. Public safety is complicated. I mean, in fact, there was a time where, violent crime and homicides and gun violence overall, was really destroying our city. It's, how it was really the norm when I was growing up in San Francisco and over the years. And right now we're seeing violent crime rates that are extremely low. We are seeing in 2023, we've had one of the lowest crime rates we've had in 10 years, not including the pandemic. And even now, year to date, crime around car break-ins, retail theft, we saw one of the biggest drops in the United States for retail theft, and violent crime continues to decline. We had not even one homicide in a major city in the month of February. It's been pretty extraordinary. But I also understand that when something happens to you or you feel that, things are a problem, that, all of the stats don't mean anything. And so it is so important for us to continue the work that we have been doing. And so some of the things I've done, I'm really very proud of, because it takes not only, a lot of, courage, but it also takes having good relationships. And one of the biggest challenges we're dealing with around crime in general is the open air drug dealing and using. And so there is no other mayor in any major city throughout this country who's made the decision to not only arrest those who are dealing drugs on the streets of San Francisco, but also those people who are using drugs in an effort to get them help and to get them the support that they need. We have worked together, and mayors are calling me from across the country. They are shocked that we're getting this kind of support, but we have a coordinated, system of state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies that are working together to address this problem. The U.S. Attorney's Office, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the California Highway Patrol, the National Guard, who's helping us with intelligence. And no, we're not going to be putting National Guards with, M16s on corners in the city. But ultimately, we are working collaboratively together. There are a number of raids, including one just last week, 57 arrests, significant amount of drugs seized. We've made over 3,000 arrests over the past year. That has about 858 of those people had outstanding warrants in even other jurisdictions. So with fentanyl, we have been very aggressive. We are starting to see change. We are definitely not where we need to be. But again, other major cities and cities all over this country are dealing with exactly what we're dealing with, but they're not handling it in the same ways that we're handling it. And I'm really excited about this momentum and what this will mean for the future. For retail theft, we have done a number of operations. We had a $17 million grant from the state, which has allowed us to use overtime resources as well as hire additional support for the district attorney's office to not only make arrests in these retail theft operations, but also prosecution. As I said, San Francisco saw one of the lowest, one of the most significant declines in retail theft anywhere in the country. We've done a number of bait car operations, which I'm really happy about, and car break-ins continue to go down. We take one group off the streets. That's like a 10% drop right there. And finally, I think what I'm excited about the most, thanks to the voters, between our license plate readers, which are already leading to results where there have been a number of arrests. We have 100 up with 300 to go. Our speed cameras, our surveillance cameras and technology, which is going to help us tremendously with the open air drug dealing, and our drone technology. All of this new 21st century technology has already had an impact on public safety. There's been a rapist that has been arrested. There have been two persons involved in retail theft operations. There's been a car theft There's been a few, this is just from the license plate readers, and the significance of technology and helping with our public safety systems, because even if as we staff up police department, as we provide alternatives to policing, which is what we're doing, we know that, still there's stuff that happens, and we have to be able to use every tool that we have at our disposal to combat it. And I'm really proud of it and excited about it. The last thing I'll say, because I can go on and on and on, as you can see, around police staffing, because everyone's talking about we need more police, and, the mayor, and the police departments. Let's be clear, when, the death of George Floyd has rocked law enforcement agencies around this country. And there was a real reckoning to deal with, some of the challenges between law enforcement and communities of color. And here in San Francisco, we had to reckon with that. And in fact, we still completed 272 recommendations from the Obama administration, U.S. Department of Justice, on 21st century policing and police reforms. That included alternatives to policing. For those folks who are mentally ill that are not violent to themselves or others, we have the Street Crisis Response Team riding around in those red vans. It's an alternative to policing. For some of those noise complaints or other things that involve nonviolent related issues, complaints at the beach and other small things, we don't always need a police response. So by taking those off the plate, wellness checks and other things off the plate of police officers, we give them the capacity they need to do other things that we mostly care about related to crime. And on top of that, just at the last academy, there were 40 cadets. There's 50 coming in the next academy class in August. We anticipate that we will be fully staffed with retirements and retention bonuses, and being the highest paid, we expect to be fully staffed with the department in the next 2.5 years. It has taken us a lot of time, a lot of work to get here, but I'm really excited about the momentum, and we're moving in the right direction.
Talk a little bit more about that momentum, because we do keep hearing that the city has the resources, but it's not getting resolved fast enough.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, nothing is getting resolved fast enough. During the pandemic, it was, because you have the ability to run the city the way the city should be run. And everyone's talking about emergency orders and emergency declarations. It's not easy to do an emergency declaration under the charter in San Francisco. I mean, the law would have to completely change to make it a lot easier. But separately from that, the city over the decades has, piled up laws and laws. I've been spending most of my time deconstructing decades of bureaucracy, getting rid of stuff. Sometimes it's not even about new ideas. It's the reason why small businesses are doing so much better in San Francisco is because we just got rid of 100 things. We haven't even created anything new. We just got rid of stuff in order to allow for people to do more than just one thing. The police department in particular, I'll give you an example. It usually would take it was a 6-month, because we have to deal with the state requirements and we have to deal with the local requirements. So we outsource the whole process for background checks and all that other stuff for the police department, but it was still taking 6 months to go through both processes. So we cut that in half by not only just going through the state process and allowing people to come into the academy, but the city process is still going on while they start the academy, as a way to speed up the process, as a way to get more people in the academy faster and get it going faster. So we've had to come up, we can't avoid what we're required to do under the law, but we have been able to come up with some creative solutions to move things forward. It's, very complex, very frustrating, but, this is bureaucracy.
Since the Supreme Court's hearing on the Grants Pass case, what is your plan for how we'll manage our homeless?
So since I've been mayor, we've helped over 15,000 people exit homelessness and climbing. And what we've seen in more of the recent point in time count is homelessness. We've seen the number slightly increase because we saw sheltered homelessness go up and we saw unsheltered homelessness go down. Why is that? People who are in shelter, whether it's the cabins, whether it's the family shelters, and all the shelter that we have also counts as technically being homeless. We increased our shelter capacity by over 60%. That's why shelter homelessness is going up. But street homelessness is going down. Encampments are going down. In fact, when I became mayor, encampments were 58% higher than they are to this day. We've seen those continue to decline because of the work that we're doing. So I'm really proud of that. We've increased our permanent supportive housing units by over 50%. We've provided new abstinence-based programs, over $20 million for 7 new programs to help people in recovery. So we're expanding our capacity to get people off the streets. But the biggest problem that we're dealing with, it's not just about homelessness. It's really about drugs. It's really about people who are, addicted to drugs and who need treatment, and in some cases need to be forced into treatment. So that's the work that we're doing, and that's why we're making arrests, because we're trying to get people off the streets, and it continues to be a struggle, but the momentum is with us, and we are seeing change, especially as we've increased our shelter and housing capacity options.
What's your vision for city planning? It can take years for small businesses to get permits to open a restaurant or a bar, but carts are allowed to serve food and drinks on the sidewalk.
Yeah. So I would say a couple of things, because here we go with another, thing that people see, but it's more complicated. First of all, it's actually a lot easier for people to open businesses. We have first year free, where we waive all city fees. We've gotten rid of over 100 things that made it difficult, and we've streamlined the process within the planning department and Department of Building Inspection. And what's interesting is, some of you, do you know that place called the Pasta Company on Clement that just opened? You're welcome, Rodney. Well, that's a perfect example of, in the past, it would have taken a long time. Also, they would have had to hire a permit expediter. And in this case, this was one of our first test cases when they opened, and they didn't have to do any of that. And it was easy and it was smooth. And that's what's happening with small businesses a lot more because of the changes that we've made. Now, home improvements and housing is a different story. That's a whole nother ball game that we are still working on. But for small businesses, it has gotten extremely better. And let's talk about the vending on the sidewalks, because I know that someone said, I'm going to get rid of all vending on the sidewalk. Well, the fact is, it is a state law. And if I could have that state law reversed, I would. But there are no votes in Sacramento to reverse that 2018 state law that allows for people to do vending on the sidewalks, and the law enforcement agencies can't do anything about it. In fact, the enforcement comes from public health, and it comes from public works. And so what we've done is we've sent city employees out there to enforce, and sadly, they've been attacked. So I've teamed up with Senator Scott Wiener and Supervisor Hillary Ronen, and we came up with an alternative to deal with the fencing on the sidewalk. It was an alternative, working with the original authors of the legislation, working with other policymakers all over the state of California, to allow for San Francisco to develop our own policy around the kinds of things that typically are stolen items from a lot of retail establishments, as a way to ban certain items that will give the police the ability to directly enforce the law. I know it sounds very complicated, but it was a compromise, and it's something is better than nothing, because right now we have nothing. It's state law. And again, I don't care what person who's running for mayor tell you they're going to do. There are no votes in the state of California to do anything about reversing this law, period. I've been trying to work on it for 2 years, and it's not going to happen. But the alternative is going to happen, and it's going to make it easier for us to deal with the fencing. And that happens as a result of retail theft, and it will make it a lot easier for us to enforce for those who don't have permits. It'll give us a chance to have the ability to enforce the law a lot better than what we're doing right now. But this is where we are, and this is a state law, and we're going to continue to do everything we can to designate areas. So there's some other things we're working on to designate areas so that we can have it more controlled, and so that it doesn't impact existing businesses. It's been a long process, a frustrating one, but we're finally getting some momentum.
What about zoning in terms of 6- and 8-story buildings and developing the West Side?
Well, San Francisco is not a museum. I mean, I know we're in a really nice museum right now, but San Francisco is an urban city, and it should change. And it's not just special because of its buildings, it's special because of its people. I believe that it's time for us to make some changes around zoning, all over San Francisco so that we can build more housing. And we need to think about the future. What does it mean for, people, who are grandparents, who kids can't afford to live here, who don't get to see their grandchildren? People who grow up here decide, if I want to have kids, I need to leave San Francisco because I just can't afford, to live in San Francisco and have kids, unless you're either wealthy, you inherit your home, or you're lucky enough to hit the lottery to get any of the few affordable housing units that you may or may not qualify for, right? So it's very complicated. I think we've put ourselves in a box by making it too expensive. It's too difficult to build housing in San Francisco. And we need to look at every opportunity site in San Francisco along transit corridors or any place else. No, we're not going to do a redevelopment 2.0 and start bulldozing people's homes in order to build housing, but where there are parking lots, where there are gas stations, where there are, spaces that are not necessarily being used or underutilized, and there's an opportunity to build, we should be able to build without obstruction.
Transit is vital for the functioning of world-class cities. Do you support this, and what are your plans to transport people to the heart of San Francisco?
So I know this is hard to believe, but Muni has actually had one of the best ridership approval ratings that it's had in, I think it's been 30 years. Because it's become more efficient and more reliable. It's become a lot cleaner and a lot safer. The crime in Muni buses, since we put in, there's 11 cameras, so you will get caught if something happens in a Muni bus. It's dropped by like 48%, and we're starting to see significant improvements because, yes, we've had to take away some lines in order to make those most significant lines based on ridership better. And so part of what we have to do as a city as we build housing, because we desperately need to continue to build housing, we need to make sure that different modes of transportation are possible in San Francisco so that people are able to move around safely and efficiently. That includes, a reliable, robust transit system throughout San Francisco, and as our city grows, increasing our various lines and making it safer and more efficient and tying it to, like what we've done with technology, which is great. You know how the buses used to come stacked behind each other, and now there's some new technology where we're able to, eliminate that problem. Protected bike lanes so that people can use that as a mode of transportation. We know a lot of families do. Making our streets safer and more efficient to get around. We just announced electric charging stations at meters because San Francisco is a densely populated city, and there are a lot of people who park on the streets. And part of what we want to do is, our environmental goals is to get more people in electric vehicles. So we need to make sure that charging stations are easily accessible whether you have a garage or not. So putting them at some of our meters and other places is just really going to be incredible. So just all the different modes of transportation, making it easier, more efficient to get around in San Francisco using all modes of transportation. With a few hiccups along the way, we hope that the city will change for the better and people will get comfortable with the bikes, the scooters, the buses, the walking, and all the autonomous vehicles, everything that you can think of. I think it could be great in the city, but the infrastructure has to be set up so that it's safe and efficient.
Year after year, the city seems to struggle to balance its over $15 billion budget. Do you see the city as having a revenue problem or a spending problem?
I think that it's complicated. And I say it's complicated because of that over $15 billion budget. A lot of that money, is a lot of our enterprise departments. Our airport has some multi-billion-dollar projects. I mean, I just cut the ribbon on the final phase of the Harvey Milk Terminal, $2.5 billion. That's a part of that. So a lot of these massive PUC construction projects, about $7 billion of that is general fund, but the rest is like PUC and, dedicated this and restricted spending that. So it's a little bit more complicated. I do think that, in this budget, as I've balanced every budget every year, there's the must do and the basics, and then there's the nice to have. And this year I had to make some hard decisions around the nice to have. There's a lot of nice.
What are some of those?
Well, some of the nice to have, we have a lot of different ambassadors, right? And so there were some ambassadors that were not, they were nice to have. But there are other opportunities that we could use these ambassadors in other spaces. So we had to make some hard changes there. There were, organizations that, just frankly were not cutting it. And we had to make some hard decisions to take away funding for a number of organizations. There were a lot of advocacy, right? And more advocacy than programming. So, I was like, we're not funding advocacy. We need to fund actual programs for young people that are effective, like science clubs and all these different things that were more comprehensive. So there was, nice to have and then need to have. I prioritized our workforce. It's hard enough to attract and retain city employees. And in fact, typically we have an average of a vacancy rate of about 7.9. We've seen a huge drop in the vacancy rate. We're now at 8.2. Nurses are below 2%. And we're starting to, hire a lot more people because during the pandemic, we couldn't do these big testing centers and come together in the same way. So we're seeing some change. We're recruiting, retaining, and, our workforce, they're not cheap. They want good paying jobs. They want benefits. They want retirement. And to avoid strikes and to avoid drama, typically, I drive a hard line, but I like to be fair, and I like to show the workforce we appreciate them because I want the streets to stay clean. I want the buses to run on time. I want people to feel safe. So I prioritize the workforce, and then some of those nice to haves, were hard decisions, but I had to draw the line somewhere.
Let's go right into that and talk about the city's narrative. How would you summarize it, and is it real or not?
So I think a couple of things. It's interesting because I saw this jewelry store get robbed online. Someone sent it to me and they were like, San Francisco. Now, I know San Francisco. And so when I see something, I'm like, that doesn't look like San Francisco. Let me do some digging. And I found out it was, I won't say the city, but it wasn't San Francisco. I don't want to throw another city under the bus. But so I think during the pandemic that happened too. And look, San Francisco had its problems. We were overwhelmed with many things, and it's been really frustrating. But everything in the Bay Area gets attributed to San Francisco, which is unfortunate, and it carries throughout the rest of the, not just country, the world. And it was surprising to me that when I went to China, how people were in love with this city. And I thought when we went to China that people would have something to say about the problems of San Francisco. In fact, they said the flights are too expensive. There are not enough flights. We want to come to San Francisco. A lot of the tour operators were, because there's a whole nother above our pay grade thing going on with the federal government and China and stuff. But at the end of the day, I was surprised. So every time I tried to engage in a conversation about the perception versus reality, the people there were very dismissive of that, and they were very focused on, we want to come to San Francisco, it's too expensive. So that's one thing. We're back to over 100% pre-pandemic levels for international flights, but China is still behind. That was one of our biggest economic engines for the city. I think the latest numbers are last year was 632 million, and they're usually at about 1.2 billion. So that's having an impact. We're about 97% domestic travel return to San Francisco. So it's starting to get to that place, but it's not where we need to be. And I think that when people get here, what we're also discovering is they're like, it's not what everyone's saying, or, it's not what I thought it was. Or we have things like, what happens in the Tenderloin too. Because I hear people tell me, sir, I took my friends to the Tenderloin. Mayor. And it's like they said, oh, we've seen this before. This happens here, this happens there. And we're such a condensed city, and it's right in the middle. And I think that's part of the challenge that we're experiencing. Ultimately, because of, fentanyl and drug use, it's been a real problem. But I do think that to a certain extent, some of it is reality in certain neighborhoods. But you go to any other neighborhood outside of, kind of Tenderloin and Soma, you would never know it's even happening. People love their neighborhoods in San Francisco. And so we definitely have a lot of work cut out for us on changing, a built-up perception about San Francisco based on what's happened right after the pandemic.
What is your leadership style? As an example, how would you work with the Board of Supervisors next term?
Well, what's interesting is I work with the Board of Supervisors now when they want to work with me. It's so, people have tried to make a lot of comments about how I won't work with people. And, it's interesting because it's more so I don't give in to demands, but I will come to the table. So people would be very surprised. Aaron Peskin and I probably work the best together. Like we just did the tax reform stuff. We've worked on a couple of other initiatives. When he wants to work with me on things, we work really well together. And even Supervisor Safai, like he brags about all the housing he was able to do in this district. And that's because I helped him do it with my teams of people because we work together. And even Hillary Ronan and I work very closely together. So much so that she endorsed me as her number 3. Can you believe that? But we're working on some great things together. And I think that, when we have our fights, sometimes those fights get elevated as to, well, the mayor isn't working with this person or the mayor won't work with that person. I will work with anyone who wants to work with me, even if we disagree. And that's okay. But the difference is, I'm not just going to give in to what you want. I want us to be able to work together and to come up with some resolutions. But let's just be honest. Politics plays such a significant role in these decisions, and it's unfortunate. And what I have always said throughout the entire time that I've been mayor, I'm not going to be afraid to make a hard decision. I'm not going to do this job in fear of losing it. I am going to every single day do everything I can to make the best decisions, be honest about when we make mistakes, course correct, and do what I can to move San Francisco forward so that when I look back, I don't have regrets. And during that time, it's not made a lot of people happy. I've pissed people off along the way, but you know what? If you're not pissing people off, you're not doing your job. So I'll keep doing everything I can to work with the board, and I'll continue to make sure that the door is always open.
If you win, what would success look like for you in the first 100 days of the new term?
Well, success will look like the vibrancy of what we're starting to see in San Francisco today. I don't know about you, but I have been in awe of how good the city looks and how good it feels. Civic Center had some Skrillex, Fred again. I just learned who they are too. 25,000 people in front of Civic Center for people who are DJing. They don't sing, they don't rap, they're like DJing. And it was a vibe and a light show. And I just thought to myself, wow, this is amazing. And I've been to all these various events, to parks and neighborhood. I did a bike ride with families, and just to see people out there in the park and they're like random bands singing and performing and having a good time. And I'm starting to see so much light, so much excitement, and so much joy. And sometimes we can get so caught up on everything that's wrong because, let's be clear, there's always going to be things that are wrong. There's always going to be problems in major cities like San Francisco. But can we just take a moment to reflect on the fact that we've been through something? We've been through a very challenging time. And we have, there's some mental health and other emotional kinds of drama attached to that. And we are coming into a new day, and the city is coming alive, and it's vibrant and it's exciting, and our parks and open space are incredible. People are loving San Francisco, whether they're visiting different neighborhoods, going to different restaurants, or spending time, just where they live. It's starting to change. We have become this incredible sports destination. Next year, NBA All-Star game in February. I was just with Roger Federer the other day, and we were hanging out at Chase Center, and he's bringing the Laver Cup to San Francisco, along with the FIFA World Cup, as well as the Super Bowl are going to be played in Santa Clara, but guess where everyone's going to be staying? In San Francisco. We got outside lands, not only 2 weekends now, but they're doing a big concert series in Union Square. There's a downtown First Thursday, Bhangra and Beats. We're seeing a 92% increase in activation fund and excitement in downtown. And again, parks, open space, vibrancy, fun, excitement. The city feels amazing. And what success looks like to me is exactly what we're starting to come into. The experience of a new day in San Francisco and new opportunities, including Visa that just opened the global headquarters of Visa in Mission Bay, and even OpenAI, 500,000 square feet of office space and new businesses being attracted and staying in San Francisco because this is an amazing city and it has been through hard times and it will always have its moments. It'll go through hard times. But we tell people time and time again, never bet against San Francisco. We've been through that hard time. We're starting to come back bigger and badder and stronger than ever. And that's what success will look like to me as I move throughout my next term as mayor of San Francisco.
And what is your vision for the future of the city of San Francisco?
Okay, let's wrap it up. This is my last question, right?
Pretty much.
Okay. So part of it is I talked about it, and a lot of it is building 82,000 units of housing, improving our transportation infrastructure, making downtown a neighborhood where you work, live, and play, continuing to help get people off the streets, and really elevating, some of the things we need to do around people struggling with addiction, continuing to do the work to make San Francisco a more vibrant, safer, better place for all people, and reminding San Franciscans that we've been through challenging times before. We've turned neighborhoods like Mission Bay, that was only railroad tracks, a golf driving range, and an Esprit outlet, into what it is now with the Golden State Warriors, UCSF, hotels, open space, restaurants, parks, and bay trails, and all kinds of exciting things. And that is exactly what we always do. We take a challenging location, we take a challenging situation, and we make magic happen. And that is what I plan to do. My vision for San Francisco is to make magic happen with all the things that I'm already doing and the other things I will continue to do to transform San Francisco as we move forward. This city is really an amazing city, and I'm proud to lead, and I will continue to fight for it every single day.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, vote for me. Vote for me, give me money. I mean, this is a campaign event. $500 max, except if any of you are commissioners, I'm not asking you for anything. Vote for me, do a house party, whatever it takes. And also, the last thing I'll say, because, I know there are a lot of folks who are running for mayor, and who wouldn't want to be mayor of San Francisco? It's a great city. I just ask that you do a deep dive into their platform, because saying something you're going to do and doing it are two different things, and the question becomes, how are you going to do it, right? And realistically, under the law, can you do it, and what it takes to do it? It's sometimes easier said than done, because if I had a magic wand and I was able to make some of this stuff happen faster, I definitely would, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of creativity. And honestly, to make the kind of decisions I've had to make, it does take a lot of courage, because there are many people who are not happy that, we've had to make some hard decisions around 21st century technology, and, saying to those who suffer from addiction that you have to be in treatment if you want money from the city, arresting drug dealers and drug users. I mean, all this stuff takes a lot of courage to do, but that's how you get results, is you have to work hard, and you have to be very honest with the public about what you can and can't do. And when you can't do something, there are other ways to get creative and figure it out. So I would ask you to do a deep dive, and once you do that, you'll realize I'm the woman for you.
Thank you very much to our San Francisco host organizations, to the Museum of the African Diaspora, and to Mayor London Breed.